There is a level of focus so sharp it feels almost unnatural. A mental stillness so deep that the world around you seems to disappear. And today you are going to discover the Japanese formula that unlocks this state on command. Think about the last time you tried to work. You sat down with every intention to focus, yet within minutes your mind drifted. Notifications pulled you away. Small urges distracted you. Thoughts scattered like birds fleeing a sudden noise. It was not a lack of motivation. It was something deeper, something hidden beneath your awareness. Now imagine a different reality, a moment where your attention locks into place with the quiet precision of a Zen archer drawing the bow. No noise inside you, no noise outside you, only presence, only intention, only momentum. What if entering this state did not require luck or inspiration, but a repeatable inner mechanism used by monks, warriors, and modern neuroscientists alike? The truth is simple yet rarely understood. Your mind is not designed to focus. It is trained to focus. And today you will learn the ancient pattern that trains it instantly. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell me in the comments what part of your life needs deep focus the most. Your journey into stillness begins now. Chapter 1. The awakening Kai had always believed he was someone with great potential. He worked hard, stayed ambitious, and filled notebooks with ideas about the future. Yet every time he sat down to focus, something inside him rebelled. His mind drifted within seconds, his thoughts scattered, his body twitched with an urge to escape. He opened tabs without meaning to. He checked his phone without remembering why. For years, Kai lived in a cycle he could not break. Day 1 began with hope. I will focus today. Day 3 brought internal arguments. Maybe later. Day 5 collapsed into surrender. The weekend became a promise to begin again. The next Monday repeated the loop. It was a silent cycle of self-betrayal, and Kai could feel it wearing away his confidence. Something was wrong inside him, something he could not name. One night, exhausted from another failed attempt to work deeply, Kai walked into a small Japanese tea house near his apartment. There was only one customer. An elderly man sat at the corner table, still as a mountain, eyes calm like winter water. Kai could not explain why, but the presence of this man pulled him in. For a moment he felt a quiet he had not felt in years. The old man spoke with a steady voice. Your mind is loud because it has never learned where to rest. Focus is not a gift. It is a place. And you have not built that place yet. Kai felt something shift inside him. This stranger had described his entire struggle with a single sentence. The man continued, if you wish to enter deep focus, you must first understand why your mind is at war with you. That was the moment Kai awakened, not to the method but to the truth. His problem was not laziness, it was misalignment, and the journey to deep focus had finally begun. Chapter 2. The Ancient Principle. The next evening, Kai returned to the tea house. The old man introduced him to a principle preserved for centuries in Zen monasteries. In those temples, monks train the mind the way a swordsman trains muscle memory. They do not wait for focus, they create it. The principle was called single-point presence, the art of collapsing the entire mind onto one deliberate action. The old man explained how Zen archers trained for decades before shooting a single arrow. Their practice began not with targets or movement, but with breath, posture, and stillness. Focus was not treated as attention, it was treated as identity. A person either embodied stillness or they did not. There was no middle ground. Modern science quietly confirmed what the monks discovered long ago. Researchers at Harvard studying attention networks found that the brain strengthens its focus circuitry only when attention is narrowed with absolute clarity. Fragmented focus builds fragmented wiring, deep focus builds unified neural pathways. In other words, the brain becomes whatever it repeatedly returns to. Kai listened, realizing he had spent years training distraction by accident. Every notification answered, every tab opened, every thought followed. All of it reinforced a brain that could not stay still. The old man offered him tea and continued, "The secret is this. The mind cannot be forced into focus. It must be guided into it through a ritual that eliminates inner noise before you begin. Focus happens when the mind has only one place to go." For the first time, Kai understood. Zen was not mystical. It was mechanical, and if he could learn the mechanism, he could change his entire life. Chapter 3. The Internal War. Kai began practicing the principle of single-point presence, but he discovered something he was not prepared for. His mind fought him, not gently but violently. The moment he attempted to focus, urges exploded inside him. His legs twitched, his hand reached for the phone. His mind darted toward fantasy or memory. It felt like wrestling an invisible animal. The old man explained the truth behind this inner resistance. The brain contains two competing systems. One seeks clarity and long-term progress. The other seeks comfort and immediate relief. When Kai tried to focus, the comfort system fired alarms. It interpreted silence as danger, stillness as threat, and effort as unnecessary risk. This was not weakness, it was biology. Neuroscientists at MIT observed this same battle in the brain. The prefrontal cortex pushes for deep work, while the limbic system pushes for escape. When these systems collide, people feel the exact symptoms Kai felt: restlessness, urges, sudden boredom, mental noise. The internal war is not psychological failure. It is neurological conflict. Kai pressed forward, but the resistance grew louder before it grew quieter. "This is the breaking phase," the old man said. "Every warrior meets it. Every monk passes through it. Your mind must learn that you are the one in command." One night, Kai felt overwhelmed and ready to quit. The old man looked at him with steady eyes. "You are not fighting distraction. You are fighting the version of yourself that cannot yet hold silence. Win this battle and a new mind will be born." Kai exhaled. For the first time he understood. Deep focus was not something he achieved. It was something he became, and becoming it required passing through the fire within. Chapter 4. The One Way. After weeks of struggle, the old man finally revealed the system that Zen practitioners and Japanese craftsmen had used for centuries to enter deep focus instantly. He called it the One Way, a path with no negotiation, no flexibility, no internal debate. A path where discipline is not forced, but engineered through structure so precise that the mind has no option except to follow. The One Way began with a simple rule: one task, one place, one entry ritual. Kai had always believed focus required inspiration or motivation. The old man corrected him. Focus requires predictability. When the mind encounters the same cues in the same sequence, it begins to anticipate deep work before it begins. The ritual becomes a switch, and when the switch flips, the mind drops into silence. Kai was instructed to choose a single workspace and never use it for anything else. Not entertainment, not eating, not browsing, only deep work. The old man explained that the brain creates associations the same way forests create paths. Each use strengthens the trail. By isolating the workspace to only one identity, Kai was building a mental doorway into deep focus. Next came the ritual. Kai had to perform the exact same sequence before every work session. Light a candle, straighten the chair, sit with spine aligned. Breathe slowly until the body released tension. Then place both hands calmly on the table. Only then could the task begin. Repetition without variation rewires the brain. Neurologists at Stanford discovered that when a routine becomes perfectly predictable, the brain shifts activity from conscious decision regions to automatic execution centers. This eliminates hesitation, inner bargaining, and the energy drain caused by micro-decisions. The ritual becomes a programming command. Enter, begin, focus. The old man warned him. Your mind will resist this at first. It will argue. It will ask for variety. It will beg for something new. But if you follow the One Way without deviation, the resistance will collapse. And so Kai began. Day after day he followed the same ritual at the same time in the same place. At first it felt stiff, mechanical, artificial, but slowly something extraordinary occurred. One evening he lit the candle and felt his mind drop instantly into clarity before he even sat down. The ritual was working. The one way had begun to reshape him. Chapter 5. Practice without gaps. With the one way established, Kai entered a new phase of training. The old man called it practice without gaps. The principle was simple. Never break the chain. Continuity matters more than intensity. Every day must include a moment of deliberate focus, even if it is small. Gaps are where the old mind returns. Kai resisted this idea at first. He believed progress required long sessions of deep work. The old man corrected him. The brain does not measure the size of effort. It measures the pattern of effort. Miss one day and the pattern weakens. Miss two and the pattern rewrites itself. The goal is not perfection. The goal is momentum. To explain, the old man pointed to the Zen monasteries where monks meditate daily regardless of conditions. Rain or illness or travel does not stop the practice. A monk will meditate in a hallway, a kitchen, a courtyard if needed, not for duration but for continuity. They understand that missing a day is not a pause, it is a return to zero. Kai began applying this principle. Some days he completed 2 hours of deep focus. Other days he managed only 10 minutes, but there were no missing days. Even during exhaustion or stress, he performed the ritual and entered focus for at least one moment. The result surprised him. His resistance dropped dramatically. The internal war diminished. He no longer needed motivation to begin. The habit had become a current that carried him. Neuroscience supported this. A research team at University College London found that consistency, not duration, is what solidifies neural circuits. Each repeated action strengthens the pathway. Even minimal effort keeps the pathway alive. Gaps cause decay. Continuity builds identity. Kai noticed a new confidence rising in him. Not loud, but steady. He was becoming someone who shows up regardless of mood. Someone who does not rely on ideal conditions. The old man nodded with approval. This is the secret most people never learn. Growth is not built by intensity. Growth is built by returning again and again until returning becomes who you are. Chapter 6. Pre-solutions and unseen obstacles. By now Kai had built ritual, discipline, and continuity. But the old man warned him. People do not fail because they lack focus. They fail because they do not prepare for the moments when focus breaks. The next phase was called pre-solutions, a system for eliminating disruption before it occurs. The old man told Kai to list every obstacle that had ever broken his focus. Hunger, noise, messages, discomfort, sudden tasks, restless thoughts, emotional waves. Then beside each one he wrote a predetermined response. When this happens, I do this. Not to think. Not to choose. To execute. This removed the chaos of decision-making. Neuroscience shows that decisions under stress drain glucose from the prefrontal cortex, weakening focus even if the decision is small. Pre-solutions bypass this drain. The response becomes automatic, allowing the mind to stay anchored in clarity. Kai tested the system. If noise arose, he shifted to a quieter corner without hesitation. If restlessness appeared, he performed 1 minute of grounding breath. If a notification triggered temptation, he placed the phone in another room. If anxiety surged, he acknowledged it silently and returned to the breath. Most powerful was the rule for emotional turbulence. If the mind becomes stormy, stop forcing. Return to the ritual, then re-enter. This prevented him from spiraling into frustration. The old man smiled. Humans fail not because obstacles appear, but because they meet obstacles unprepared. A warrior does not hope the battlefield will be peaceful. He prepares for the storm before the first strike. Over time, Kai noticed something remarkable. Obstacles lost their power. They no longer pulled him out of deep focus. They no longer created inner negotiation. The pre-solutions acted like a shield around his attention, allowing him to continue even through difficulty. The old man concluded, "True focus is not the absence of distraction. True focus is the mastery of response. When you stop being surprised by difficulty, you stop being controlled by it." Chapter 7. Transformation. Kai did not notice the transformation happening at first. It arrived quietly, the way dawn replaces darkness without announcing itself. One evening he lit the candle for his ritual and felt something unusual. There was no resistance, no inner voice searching for escape, no craving for stimulation. His mind entered focus as naturally as breath enters the lungs. The old battle had ended. The old man observed him closely. "Your mind has crossed the threshold. You no longer attempt to focus. You inhabit focus." This was the moment Kai realized something profound. All along, he had been trying to change his performance. But the system had been changing his identity. His posture had become still. His breath had become steady. His attention had become anchored. Even his thoughts felt different, moving with more clarity, as if they had been sharpened by practice. Neuroscientists describe this shift as identity-level encoding. When behaviors repeat long enough, the brain stops asking if it should perform them and assumes this is who you are. Kai was no longer the man who struggled with distraction. He had become someone who returns to presence by default. The internal war that once defined him now felt like a distant memory. One night he asked the old man a question. "Why does this feel so natural now, when it used to feel impossible?" The old man replied with calm certainty, "Because you have stopped chasing focus. Instead, you have become someone who cannot live outside of it. That is transformation, not the acquisition of new habits, but the dissolution of the old self." Kai felt the truth in those words. His new mind was not built from force. It was built from alignment. The rituals, the continuity, the pre-solutions had carved a new path inside him, a path where distraction could not survive. The old man ended with a final reminder. Transformation is not a moment, it is a direction. Continue walking and the path expands. Stop walking and the old forest returns. Kai bowed his head. His transformation was not complete, but it had begun. Chapter 8. The deep focus state. With his transformation underway, the old man guided Kai toward the highest level of the practice, the deep focus state, a mental condition where time dissolves, effort disappears, and the mind enters a seamless flow of clarity. Masters of calligraphy, Zen archers, samurai strategists, and modern peak performers all describe this state with the same feeling. No friction, no noise, only pure immersion. The old man explained the process. When your mind aligns intention, breath, posture, and ritual, the prefrontal cortex reduces its activity. Thought slows. Self-consciousness quiets. A deeper system takes command. This is the same mechanism elite performers experience during peak execution. Their actions feel effortless, not because the task is easy, but because the mind no longer interferes. Kai began practicing longer sessions of focus. At first he noticed subtle changes. His breath remained steady, even under pressure. His eyes softened instead of straining. His mind drifted less and returned more quickly. The old man nodded. "You are entering the gate." But the true breakthrough came unexpectedly. One afternoon, Kai sat at his desk, performed his ritual, and began working. When he finally looked up, the sun had set and hours had passed. There was no sense of time, no fatigue, only quiet satisfaction. He had entered the deep focus state without trying, the old man explained. When the mind stops negotiating, when obstacles are pre-answered, when rituals become instinct, the path becomes smooth. The deep focus state is not something you force, it is something you allow. Kai felt an inner shift. He had spent years believing focus required discipline. Now he understood. Deep focus requires surrender, not surrender of effort, but surrender of noise. The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have learned the system. But mastery is not the end. It is the beginning. Your task now is to live from this state, not visit it. Kai inhaled deeply. He felt ready. Deep focus is not a mystery reserved for monks or prodigies. It is a state any human can access when the mind is trained to return to itself. Kai learned this through ritual, continuity, pre-solutions, and identity transformation. But his journey mirrors something universal. Every one of us carries both a scattered mind and a still mind inside. The one we feed becomes the one we live from. Most people wait for motivation or the perfect moment to begin, yet the path to clarity begins the moment you stop negotiating with distraction and choose presence over noise. As Kai discovered, focus is not built through force. It is built through repeated alignment. One ritual, one breath, one return to the task. Again and again until the practice becomes who you are. If you feel lost or overwhelmed in your own life, remember this truth. You do not need a stronger mind. You need a simpler path, and the Japanese formula gives you exactly that. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share in the comments the ritual you will adopt starting today. Your transformation begins not when you understand the system, but when you commit to living it. Your mind is waiting for you to choose its next shape.